I grew up in a small Midwestern town, the kind where everyone knows which families live on which streets and who belongs to which church pew on Sunday mornings. From the outside, we looked like the perfect middle-class family. Dad in construction, mom teaching at the local elementary school, 3 kids spaced neatly apart like stair steps. But inside our house, it was clear from the very beginning who mattered most, and it wasn't me. I was the middle child, wedged between my older brother Daniel and my younger sister Emily. Some people say the middle child always gets overlooked. In my case, it wasn't just overlooked, it was like I was an extra piece of furniture, useful when needed, invisible the rest of the time. Emily was the miracle baby. She was born premature and spent weeks in the NICU. My parents turned that struggle into her lifelong crown. Everything she did after that was framed as extraordinary, even when it wasn't. If Emily wanted something, it was hers. If Emily cried, the world stopped spinning until she was soothed. I learned quickly that my needs were always negotiable, but hers were sacred. I still remember one Christmas when I was about 8. I had begged for a Lego set all year, the kind that came with hundreds of pieces and a booklet to build a castle. When I opened my box on Christmas morning, my heart sank. It was a much smaller, off-brand kit, nothing like what I'd asked for. I swallowed the disappointment because that's what I'd been trained to do. Then Emily started crying because one of her Barbie dolls didn't have the right color shoes. My dad muttered something about fixing this right away and left the house. 2 hours later, he returned from the only open store in town with a new Barbie set for her. Everyone praised him for being such a devoted father. Meanwhile, my Lego knockoff sat unopened in the corner. Nobody noticed. It wasn't just toys, it was school too. In 5th grade, I studied for weeks to win the spelling bee. I made it all the way to the final round, where I tripped up on chrysanthemum. I still took 2nd place. My parents congratulated me with a distracted, "Good job." But when Emily won Most Improved Reader in 2nd grade, they invited the whole extended family over for cake and a party. Her reading level improved 2 points. My spelling trophy collected dust on a shelf. The thing about growing up invisible is that you start to believe it. You stop asking for attention because you know it won't come. You stop bringing home your drawings, your test scores, your ideas. By the time I was a teenager, I had perfected the art of shrinking myself down. My job was to stay out of the way, to keep quiet, and to make sure Emily always shined. The night of the school talent show is seared into my memory. I was 12, clutching my guitar backstage, nerves buzzing in my stomach. I'd practiced Wonderwall until my fingers bled. It was my chance to finally show my parents that I had something worth noticing. They promised they'd be there. When I walked onto the stage and scanned the cafeteria, their seats were empty. I still played, heart pounding, pretending not to care. I thought maybe they'd arrive late. They didn't. By the time I got home, my mom was tucking Emily into bed. She looked up at me and said, "Sorry, honey, she was cranky tonight. We'll catch the next one." There never was a next one. That was the pattern of my childhood. Emily's moods, Emily's needs, Emily's victories. My brother kept his head down too, but at least he got the responsible oldest badge. I got nothing, just silence. Even as a kid, deep down, I knew something was broken. But when you're young, you don't question the rules of the house you're born into. You just learn them. And the rule in mine was simple. Emily first, everyone else second, always. By the time I hit my teenage years, I had stopped expecting anything from my parents. Hope only set me up for disappointment, and disappointment was a feeling I'd had more than enough of. Instead, I focused on what I could control, working part-time jobs, saving money, and doing my best in school. If I wanted something, I had to find a way to get it myself. When I turned 16, all my friends were buzzing about getting their licenses and their first cars. I wasn't expecting a shiny new ride, just maybe some help, or at least a promise that my turn would come. My parents owned an old Chevy truck that had been passed around like a family heirloom. Daniel got to drive it until he left for college. Naturally, I assumed I'd inherit the keys when he moved out. Instead, Dad told me, "We're saving it for Emily. She'll need it more when she starts driving." I remember standing in the driveway, staring at that beat-up truck, feeling the air leave my lungs. Emily was 14 at the time. She wouldn't even touch a steering wheel for another 2 years. Until then, I was stuck begging rides from friends, pedaling a bike across town, or working extra hours to save for a junker of my own. By the time Emily finally turned 16, sure enough, the truck became hers, complete with a bow and a big family photo op. It was always like that. She got the benefits of being the baby, while I got told to be patient or understand your sister's needs. Patience became my middle name, but inside, resentment was carving lines I didn't even recognize yet. Then came college. That was the real slap in the face. I worked my ass off in high school, advanced placement classes, part-time jobs, volunteering, anything to build a strong application. My parents praised Emily constantly for her cheerleading competitions, but when I brought home acceptance letters, they barely looked at them. I wanted to attend a state university, not even the most expensive option, just solid and respectable. But when I brought up financial aid, my parents shut it down immediately. "We don't have the money," Mom said. "You'll have to take loans or figure it out yourself." A year later, when Emily applied to a private liberal arts college with tuition nearly triple what I had needed, suddenly the money appeared. Savings accounts were emptied, loans were co-signed, and family friends were guilted into investing in Emily's future. They said she had potential and needed to be supported at all costs. Meanwhile, I was juggling 2 part-time jobs just to afford ramen noodles and textbooks. When I called home, Mom would rush me off the phone because Emily was having a crisis about her roommate or her major. One time I mentioned my growing student debt, and Dad's response was, "Well, you're the responsible one. You'll figure it out." That became my unofficial role, the responsible one, the forgotten one, the one who could manage alone. It was supposed to be a compliment, but really it was an excuse, a way for my parents to justify abandoning me emotionally and financially while pouring every ounce of energy into my sister. Even when Emily flunked out for a semester after too many missed classes and too many parties, my parents never blamed her. They blamed the professors, the school system, even bad influences she hung around with. They doubled down on their support, as if her failure only proved how much more she needed them. Meanwhile, I sat in a cramped apartment, eating microwaved noodles, drowning in debt, and wondering if maybe I really was less deserving. Looking back, I see it clearly. My teenage years and early 20s weren't just about growing up. They were about learning, over and over, that in my family, effort didn't matter, sacrifice didn't matter, achievement didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was keeping Emily's pedestal tall and shiny. But as much as it hurt, those years shaped me. I learned to hustle, I learned resilience, and most importantly, I learned that if I was ever going to build a life worth living, I'd have to do it myself because no one in my family was going to hand me a damn thing. After I graduated college, life became a grind. I was saddled with debt, working long hours at a job that barely covered rent, and still trying to convince myself that I was on the right path. My parents never asked about my career, never cared to know if I was struggling. All their energy was poured into Emily's orbit, her classes, her relationships, her internships, her endless string of discovering herself moments. But there was one person who always saw me, my grandfather. Grandpa had been a carpenter his whole life, the kind of man who could build a rocking chair from a pile of scrap wood and make it last longer than anything you'd buy in a store. When I was a kid, he used to take me fishing on Saturday mornings. He'd bring a thermos of coffee for himself, a thermos of hot chocolate for me, and we'd sit by the lake in silence until I got brave enough to ask questions. He always answered them patiently, like I mattered. He noticed things my parents never did. When I was struggling with calculus in high school, he'd sit with me at the kitchen table and work through problems, even though he hadn't touched math in decades. When I got my first apartment after college, he showed up with a toolbox and spent a whole weekend fixing the broken cabinets and squeaky doors. And when I was drowning in student loan payments, he slipped me an envelope with $2,000 inside. "Don't tell your folks," he whispered. "This is just between us."
It wasn't the money that mattered. It was that someone believed I was worth investing in. As the years passed, Emily's life spiraled into a mix of failed jobs and unstable relationships. My parents defended her at every turn. She's just finding herself, they'd say, as though being nearly 25 and unemployed was some kind of brave journey. Meanwhile, I was breaking my back at work, building a modest but stable life. My accomplishments, promotions, raises, paying off chunks of debt never registered at home, but Grandpa noticed every single one. Then, last year, he got sick. It happened fast. One day, he was working in his garage, sanding down a piece of oak for a new bookshelf. A few months later, he was in a hospital bed, frail and quiet. I visited him as much as I could, sitting by his side, telling him stories about work, about the few good things in my life, even about Emily, though I left out the parts that would have broken his heart. The night before he passed, he held my hand and said, "You've carried a heavy load, son, heavier than most. Don't let anyone take what you've earned." His words stuck to me, though I didn't understand just how much they would matter. When the will was read a few weeks later, everyone gathered in the lawyer's office: my parents, Emily, my brother Daniel, and me. The lawyer's voice was calm as he listed out possessions and bequests. My parents received some savings bonds, Emily got my grandmother's jewelry box, Daniel got Grandpa's tools. And then the lawyer turned to me. "To my grandson," he read, "who worked hard when no one noticed, who stood tall when no one thanked him, I leave my house." The room went silent. For the first time in my life, I was the one who had been chosen. I felt tears sting my eyes as the words sank in. It wasn't just a house. It was proof that I had mattered to him, that someone, somewhere, had seen me. But as I glanced at my parents and at Emily, I realized instantly, this gift, this small slice of justice, wasn't going to come without a fight. The reading of the will should have been a moment of closure, but instead, it became the opening act of another battle in my life. For once, I had been chosen. For once, something was mine. But my parents and Emily couldn't let it go. It started the very same night. My mom called me, her voice syrupy sweet. "Sweetheart," she said, "we were thinking, wouldn't it make sense for Emily to have the house? She's the youngest. She's just starting her life. You're stable enough. You'll figure it out. Grandpa probably didn't mean for you to keep it forever. He just wanted you to be taken care of until you got settled." I could feel my stomach clenching. "No, Mom, he left it to me, in writing. He knew exactly what he was doing." There was a pause, then my dad's gruff voice in the background. "Don't be selfish, son. Your sister needs a home. You can rent somewhere. She can't." That became the daily refrain. Calls, texts, subtle guilt trips. Emily herself rang me up, crying so hard I could barely understand her. "How can you do this to me, to us? I'm trying to plan a wedding and we don't even know where we're going to live. Don't you care about family?"
Every conversation ended the same way. Them pushing, me refusing, my chest tight with guilt afterward. It felt like I was 12 again, invisible and wrong no matter what I did. Only this time, I had something they wanted, and they weren't above twisting the knife. Then came the smear campaign. Emily posted vague Facebook statuses about selfish siblings and betrayal in the family. My aunts and uncles started calling, parroting whatever sob story my parents had fed them. Even family friends reached out, saying things like, your sister's always been fragile. Maybe you should consider her needs." I almost broke. Late at night, I'd sit in the house Grandpa left me, my house, and wonder if I really was cruel. Maybe giving it up would buy me peace. Maybe it would finally make them see me as good, as worthy. But then, I remembered the way Grandpa looked at me that last night, his voice rough but certain. "Don't let anyone take what you've earned." The only lifeline I had came from an unexpected place, my brother, Daniel. He had been quiet during the will reading, just nodding when he got Grandpa's tools. But a week later, he called me out of the blue. "Listen," he said, "I know they're putting pressure on you. Don't give in. Grandpa left you that house for a reason. He saw what you went through. He wanted you to have something that was yours. If you let them take it, they'll never stop. Hearing that cracked something open inside me. For once, I wasn't alone. For once, someone in the family wasn't asking me to step aside. Still, the pressure didn't let up. It built and built until finally my parents staged what they called a family dinner. They insisted I come, said we needed to resolve this once and for all. Against my better judgment, I went. The moment I walked in, I knew it was an ambush. Emily sat at the table with her fiancé, fake tears streaming. My parents had a stack of papers already waiting, the deed transfer filled out with her name. My mom smiled like it was a foregone conclusion. "All you have to sign, sweetheart," she cooed. "Let's keep the family together." My hands shook as I sat down. For nearly 3 decades, I had been trained to fold, to give in, to disappear. But something in me was changing, something stronger. And that night, I decided I wasn't going to disappear anymore. The air at that dinner table felt thick enough to choke on. My mom's smile was tight, rehearsed, while Emily sniffled dramatically across from me, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. My dad sat at the head of the table, arms folded, glaring at me like I'd already disappointed him just by showing up. The deed transfer papers sat between us like a loaded weapon. "Go ahead, honey," Mom said softly, sliding the pen toward me. "We don't need to drag this out. Just sign and we can all move forward as a family." I looked down at the papers. My name erased, Emily's written neatly in its place. My chest was pounding so hard I thought they could hear it. For almost 3 decades, I had been conditioned to say yes, to surrender whatever I had for Emily's sake. The reflex was there, tugging at me even now. If I signed, the pressure would end. They would stop calling me selfish. I could finally be the good son they always demanded I be. But then I thought of Grandpa. I thought of him handing me that envelope of money in secret, telling me not to let anyone take what I'd earned. I thought of the quiet pride in his eyes when I told him about my promotion, or the way he'd spent hours fixing up my first apartment just so I'd have a little piece of stability. He hadn't given me this house by accident. He had chosen me. For once, someone had chosen me. I pushed the papers back across the table. "No," I said. My voice was shaking, but the word rang out like a bell. Emily's face crumpled instantly. "How can you do this to me?" she wailed, clutching her fiancé's arm. "I'm your sister. You're ruining my future." Dad slammed his fist on the table. "Enough of this nonsense. You're being selfish and ungrateful. Your sister needs that house more than you ever will." My mom leaned forward, her tone sharp now. "We raised you better than this. Family comes first. Don't you care about your sister's happiness?" I felt something inside me snap, a rope that had been holding me down for years finally giving way. "No," I said again, louder this time. "Family doesn't come first if it means destroying me. I've given up everything for Emily my whole life. My childhood, my opportunities, my future. Not this. Not anymore." The room went silent for a beat, my words hanging heavy in the air. My parents looked stunned, like I'd just spoken in a language they couldn't understand. Emily sobbed harder, muttering about betrayal. I stood up. My hands were trembling, but I felt lighter than I had in years. "I'm keeping the house. Grandpa gave it to me, and I won't dishonor him by signing it away. If you can't respect that, then maybe we shouldn't see each other for a while." I walked out before anyone could stop me. Behind me, I heard my dad shouting my name, my mom crying, Emily screeching about how I had ruined her life. But I didn't turn back. Daniel was waiting for me in the driveway. He'd refused to go inside, knowing what it was. When he saw we come out, empty-handed, he nodded once. "You did it," he said. Then he clapped me on the shoulder. "I'm proud of you." It was such a simple phrase, but it nearly undid me. I hadn't heard those words from anyone in my family, not once. For the first time, I realized I didn't need all of them to believe in me. I just needed to believe in myself. That night, I drove back to my grandfather's house, my house. I sat on the porch, listening to the crickets, the cool night air washing over me.
For the first time in my life, I felt something I'd never truly known before. Freedom. In the days after that dinner, the silence from my parents was deafening. No more daily calls, no more guilt trips, just absence. Emily posted vague rants online about toxic siblings and family betrayal, but I stopped reading them. For once, their voices weren't the loudest in my life. Instead, I poured my energy into the house. Every creaky floorboard I fixed, every wall I painted, felt like stitching up old wounds. This wasn't just a building. It was proof that I mattered, that someone had seen me all along. Daniel dropped by often, sometimes to help, sometimes just to share a beer on the porch. He didn't say much, but his quiet presence reminded me that I wasn't alone in this family. That meant more than I could ever tell him. I've started therapy. I'm learning that setting boundaries doesn't make me selfish, it makes me healthy. For so long, I thought love meant sacrifice, that being the good son meant disappearing so Emily could shine. But now I know love also means protecting yourself. Grandpa's house gave me more than a roof over my head. It gave me permission to stop shrinking, to claim space, to believe I'm worthy of more than scraps. And maybe that's the lesson I needed most. I am not invisible. I never was. I was just waiting for the courage to finally stand in my own light.